Yo, it's the exam coach checking in with you. I hope you've had a cracking week and you've got some stuff done, made some good progress. The reason I'm starting on that note is because I'm doing this podcast at the end of the week. It's a Friday evening. I am not out. I'm here podcasting, getting it done, and topping off what's been a really great week. Made some really good inroads, put out some great content for you guys. Hope you like it. Give me feedback. Let me know what you want to see more of. Let me know which parts you think I could improve. I'm always open to constructive criticism like that. The other thing is, try to check in with yourself at the end of every week and figure out what's gone well and what's not gone so well. Be candid with yourself, be honest, and look to build on those positives and try to correct or improve the negatives. And you'll find week over week, you start making more progress. To kick off this one then, what are we going to talk about? We're going to talk about speed and how that is important in the context of your exams. Specifically, I'm going to build on some of the ideas from the YouTube video, 7 Steps to Faster Revision. I'll link it below and you can have a look at that another time. But in this podcast, I'm going to build some context around each of the points. I'm going to make a few connections between exams and some other experiences that I've had that involve speed specifically and being able to work fast, and also your career, because I think one thing that I didn't realize is how essential speed is in the workplace. In any job you have, being punctual, on time, that's one thing, but then also being able to get work done quickly and to a high standard is another, and it's really important, and it's very, very highly valued by people in the business world and employers especially. And for example, if you want a little example, I was involved in the advertising industry, so the biggest name in that industry is a guy called Sir Martin Sorrell. He is a British businessman who started an agency, or a group now it is, I suppose, called WPP back in it was late 1900s, let's put it that. I don't know the exact decade that he set it up in. Might have been 80s or 90s as a guess. But the punchline is he's very successful, built this huge group, massive advertising group, and he recently left it, or was semi-pushed out. I don't really know the truth behind that story, but it's irrelevant to what I'm about to say. He gave his 2 key things of what he valued most as tenets for success, or good qualities in people, good qualities in business. The first was perseverance, and the second was speed. Those 2 things working in conjunction with each other, and that just shows you how speed is very, very important. And being able to work fast and not sacrifice too much of the quality is a huge skill, and knowing when to kind of opt a bit for quality versus opting for speed and vice versa is also very important. Anyway, let's crack on into the meat of this. So, 7 steps to faster revision. I'm just going to rattle through some of these points and add a bit of context for you, so hopefully these messages just hit home and you can start implementing them and getting them done. Because remember, that's one of the key things we're trying to do on the Exam Coach podcast. Deeds, not words. Really getting stuff done. Doing what we say, following through, making stuff happen in a world where it is very difficult to make stuff happen because there are so many distractions, options, alternatives, different things to be doing. Very rarely can we focus on one thing and improve it. Okay, let's kick it off. The first thing you can do to revise faster is work backwards. So start from the end point, start with the mark scheme, start with the answer the examiner is looking for, and then look at the past paper and the question on it, then look at the syllabus and what it has to say about perhaps the key terminology you found in the answer, because what you're doing by doing this is you're starting with what the examiner wants to see, and that's the most important information, and then you're building up your knowledge and understanding around that. That's a really, really nice hack to be a bit more targeted in your revision and not waste any time on revising irrelevant information. By doing that, you're making sure that everything you revise is very, very, very likely to come up on the exam. A lot of students actually revise stuff out of textbooks that really probably isn't going to come up on the exam, isn't relevant, isn't what the examiner's looking for you to say. So one of the best ways to Avoid this is to go straight to the mark scheme and check out what the answers are, what kind of answers have been written before, and that's going to help you revise faster. The other thing I'd point out here is this is also true in business, starting with the beginning, or the end, starting with the end in mind, reverse engineering. Think about the biggest, or the company that's in the limelight for being the most successful at the moment, Amazon, if you want to go just by gross profits, and also just a pretty incredible business model, being able to deliver to that many people across the world. You look at that, and having all the other parts of the business as well, like web services and other things. But they're customer obsessed. Jeff Bezos is absolutely obsessed with the end consumer. He's starting from what does the customer think and how can I give them what they want, plus a bit extra, and innovate on top of that. So he's not thinking about, okay, let's create an awesome idea. He's thinking about, let's think about the customer and what they want, and then let's work back from there. Likewise, the guy who I used to work for, Gary Vaynerchuk, always talked about this, reverse engineering, thinking of what's the end goal and then working back from there. Think about that. It's a really great way of thinking about problems and trying to solve them. It's counterintuitive, and I think it really helps you make some headway. The second way you can revise a bit faster is to just give yourself a quick test at the end of a revision session. Such an easy thing to do. Take some notes, read through some information, do a study session, and then just give yourself a quick test on what you wrote. Write down some questions. Or just don't chuck away your notes in the bin. Chuck them away as in chuck them out of sight. And then just try and take notes freestyle without anything in front of you. Try and recall some of that information. Just by forcing your brain or giving your brain the chance to do this, the research indicates that your recall is going to be improved by as much as 15%. And that's doing a test immediately after your study session. The test can be 5-10 minutes long. Doesn't have to be long. Just quick fire questions. Try and make your brain work. And it's just such an easy hack to save you time. You're not going to have to go over stuff as much, and you're going to revise faster. Next thing you can do is Pomodoro technique, or the Pomodoro technique. Really nice little technique, this. Essentially what it is you set a timer for 25 minutes and you just focus on one revision task for those 25 minutes. You can set the timer on your iPhone, then you take a 5-minute break after the 25-minute session is up. Then you begin another 25-minute session. You're doing 25-minute sessions, one after the other, with a quick break in between. And it's great because it just gets you started. It's a set amount of time. You know how long you're going to revise for, and you just hit it. One task, focus on it, get the momentum going. It chunks up your revision as well because you're just focusing on one task, so it seems a bit easier to do and get started with, and it's a superb momentum builder. It's going to build speed in your revision because you're not going to spend as much time skitting around and not getting down to a task. Instead, you're going to be very clear about what you need to do, and you're going to build speed up throughout that revision session. Number 4, it's linked to the Pomodoro technique, but it's kind of a plus up from it. And basically, the thing that I'd recommend you do here is when you're doing the Pomodoro technique, if you get to 25 minutes and you've got momentum, you're feeling good, keep on revising. Don't just take a break for the sake of taking a break. This is one of the things that I think students get so confused about. They allocate amounts of time to an amount of success or an amount of progress, and that it doesn't work like that. Some people can get more done in 5 minutes than other people can get done in 20 minutes because they're doing things efficiently and effectively. They've worked at it over time. They've got better methods. They're more intense in their focus and their brain power. So you can get, the time is irrelevant. It's about momentum and sustaining it. And when you're feeling good and you're in the mood and you're working well, do not take a break. Keep going until you need to take a break. That's what a break's for. It's to refresh. It's to reset and get ready for the next session, not just because you have to. So, really important point there. Don't attribute any quantity of time to a quantity of success. Instead, just work as quickly as you can, as intensely as you can. You will get better over time. And when you have momentum, don't give it up easy. Keep working until you lose it. The 5th way you can revise faster is to switch up your revision techniques. You should be rotating them regularly, and this applies for your revision techniques in terms of your note-taking as well as your testing techniques. So, for example, in your note-taking, you could rotate between making mind maps, writing bullet points under topic headings, and creating flashcards. Those are 3 note-taking techniques there, different formats. And what this is going to do is it's going to keep on presenting the information to your brain in different ways. So you require a bit more brain power to actually compute that and understand the information in the slightly different format. And a bit of research has been done into this, and it's the technical term for it is interleaved practice. So this is the idea that you're changing the method of study regularly, meaning you don't actually get a chance to master it. In fact, you just about get the hang of it, and then you move on to the next one, and then you move on to the next one, and you move on to another one. And constantly your brain's having to put in a lot of work to actually just stay up to speed with all of this stuff. And one theory as to why it works well in learning many different topics is because each practice attempt is different from the last. So any kind of rote responses, when you're just reading through, perhaps it's a vocabulary list, translations, definitions of words, and you can almost guess the next word in the list because you've read through it so many times. And that's kind of rote learning, isn't it? You don't actually know what the word means necessarily. You've just learnt the position it is in the list, and your brain's able to remember it that way. But the moment the list is in front of you, you're not going to be able to remember it because you don't actually know what the word means. It's a bit like when people understand or memorize quotes or sentences, but they don't know what the quote means, so they can't actually remember it without assistance, but they can when they have perhaps a cue in front of them. So a couple of words, for example. And this, you want to always try and go for the stronger memory method, which is not having anything in front of you and being able to remember it, no cues or assistance, because you're not going to have that in the exam. A second explanation for this interleaved practice and why it's good is because it strengthens memory associations, because the way you're processing information changes every time. So you want to use this because it's they've used it with sports people, they've used it with musicians, and it's a great way of learning multiple things relatively quickly. You don't get bogged down. You can get through stuff very, very fast. You can constantly refresh different types of information. You can review it many different times using spaced repetition, which is going to help. And you should just really consider it as a way of studying as opposed to trying to knock off one massive task after another. And giving yourself variation like this will probably make more revision more interesting anyway. The 6th way to revise faster. You need to start prioritizing coverage of topics over detail. Now, you want to be careful with this because you need to be honest with yourself how much information you're actually taking in when you're going through a topic very quickly, because you're prioritizing the coverage of it over the detail. The reason you want to do this is because you will end up reviewing information more often because you're reviewing it fast, so you're not able to take everything in. That means you will have to go back and understand perhaps the bits that you didn't understand the first time around. But what this will do is it's kind of a way of getting yourself or forcing yourself to do spaced repetition, which is where you are interrupting the forgetting curve, or the way human beings forget information, which is over time the information will eventually kind of drop out of our memory, a bit like a hard drive that deletes old memories as new ones come in. And every time you interrupt that process of deletion or forgetting, you're going to remember the information again for a longer period of time, and so on and so on. And you want to basically just do that all the way up to the exams, and eventually you will forget the information. That's why a lot of people say, I can't actually remember anything that I did in GCSE Spanish when they're 30, because it's true, they can't. But up to the time of the exam, they could, hopefully, if they revise properly. And that kind of gives exams sometimes a bad name, because they're like, oh, I'm just going to forget all this information. What's the point in learning it? The point in learning it is not to remember it when you're 30, necessarily. It's to remember some of the principles, which you will, because those are just fundamental things that you remember, the general stuff, not the nitty-gritty detail. the point of doing the exercise in the first place is to show that you can overcome the mental challenge of having a task that needs to be done on time under pressurized circumstances, and it's probably quite challenging for you anyway. You need to be organized, you need to figure out how to do things in a certain way to be successful and achieve, and those skills are valuable in any career you go into. The next thing, when you're doing this skimming of information, you're practicing thinking and working fast, and that's going to be handy for any exam because you're going through information more quickly. You're practicing actually just reading stuff faster, computing stuff faster. A huge skill, very, very valuable for exams and later for the workplace. Also, you're quickly figuring out what you do and don't know. This is very good because you're being targeted about your revision. You are understanding, okay, I know this topic very well, I don't know this topic too well, and the topic that you don't know too well, you can focus your active recall testing sessions and spaced repetition sessions around that. Finally, you need to try and find a way to be interested in this stuff. I know exams are not they're not the most interesting things in the world when you compare them to perhaps your passions in the entertainment industry, a movie, or let's say Monday Night Football for me, or an absolute corker of a night out if you're into your dancing and you're going out with friends and things like that. Exams don't even stand a chance against that, but you can find small insights, small glimmers and glimpses of inspiration and things that might be interesting to you down the line, even if it's very, very tenuous. And I think one of the clips, if you haven't looked at the video, you should absolutely look at the video for this reason, is one of the clips of Steve Jobs about how he attended calligraphy classes at Reed College and how that actually informed his understanding of typeface and the MacBook. Really, it's the fonts on the MacBook came about through that process of him going to Reed College and trying that class. And the key point he makes from it is, you know, looking forward, when he took that class, he couldn't connect the dots. He couldn't see that is going to be, you know, one of the fundamental pillars of the MacBook typeface, which we all use now if you have a MacBook, or it's definitely impacted someone that you know, seeing as Apple is one of the most successful companies out there and has sold, I don't know if it's sold the most tech, but it's sold loads. So it's clearly done a great job there. And a lot of these things don't make sense when you're looking forward into the future and figuring out, okay, how will this actually be useful to me? But having the faith that the dots will connect looking back, and you will find use for some things in a way that perhaps you didn't understand at first, might just give you that little nudge to say, hey, try and find an interest in this. Try and see how this could be useful and persevere with it, because in 10 years' time, something might just pop up and surprise you. So those are the 7 steps to revise faster. And it goes without saying, when you're interested in something, you're going to be able to work through it more quickly because you won't procrastinate, be distracted as quickly, and you'll be a little bit more focused and on task and able to do stuff. Sweet. So I rattled through those. I hope I've added some value there. The one thing I would say is speed. For me, I did find it tough because I was quite detail orientated when I was younger. I didn't like not knowing certain details. I didn't like feeling as if I was skipping stuff. For example, I tried skim reading and I hated it because I just couldn't understand the page. I just couldn't understand the page of text. And I was always a very slow reader. It was one of those things, you know, when the teacher says, hey, everybody in class, here's a paragraph of text. Can you read through it? And then I'm going to ask some questions on it. And I would spend so much of the time looking around the class and seeing everybody else kind of power through this stuff and finish before me. And to be fair, if I hadn't looked around so much, I probably would have stood a much better chance of actually finishing at a decent time. But it was because I was looking at everybody else and how quickly they were reading. And, you know, when you see people turn pages in a book, you're like, crikey, you're on page 7, I'm on page 2. And that whole kind of thinking, looking over my shoulder way too much. But you will get faster at this stuff if you persevere. If you just build little by little by little. Don't compare yourself to other people. I use this story quite a bit where I say, you don't know what other people's upbringing or what they were exposed to as a child from a young age has impacted how they think and operate day to day now. So, for example, some kids might have just been exposed to reading and books. One of my best mates, his dad is an author, and he is very, very well read, and because of that, he's cracking. He's got cracking in terms of, his intelligence, if you want to call it that. I call it maybe vocabulary, because I always like to discern between different types of intelligence, and there's loads of them. But he, very well read, very fast reader, can read English text very well, understand it, great vocabulary, great understanding of English literature in general. And it's because that was just the environment that he was brought up in. And that's fantastic. But a lot of people don't have that. They'll have different benefits maybe. So you could look at mine perhaps, and I was exposed a lot to social situations. I was always outside playing a lot of sports, playing around with just random friends a lot. So socially, learned quite a good few good lessons there. I'm not like some social guru, but I would say that I'm average or above average compared to the rest of the population in terms of just being able to be pleasant to people and have a decent conversation and be a conversationalist kind of thing. But everybody has their own kind of tee up in life, and the cards they're dealt with at the beginning. And I think that's something that you just need to consider to give you the confidence. Because when I saw my friend being so great at English, that gave me the confidence to say, okay, all this is he's just had a great environment around him where he was able to do this. So I can create that for myself now, and I can do it. I can make myself like that if I want to. I just need to copy what's happened there, or what I think's happened, and make it happen. And if you can look at things like that, I think it's really positive, and you can really start doing things that you don't think are possible because of maybe how you think these things are set up in terms of the nature versus nurture argument. I like to think that I don't know much about the debates, but I just like to think, because I think it's best for me and how I want to operate, that nurture really does hold a big influence on how you turn out. I like that because I can change that, and that's why I like it. And I haven't looked at the arguments too much, because that point of view serves me and it helps me move forward. So think about it. Are there things that you can do to just incrementally improve your performance, move yourself forward a bit more, and get a bit faster, get a bit more on the ball? Look at your friends as well. Look at what they're doing. Be reflective about what they're good at, because you can learn so much from people when you look for the good in them, and you really, and talk to them about it as well. They love it. I love it when people talk about, there's not, I'm not amazing at too many things, but I like to think I'm okay at some. And if someone does point it out, it feels great, and you immediately like that person because they just honestly and genuinely just say, "Hey, look, I've realised you're good at this, or you seem to know what you're doing a little bit more than me. Can you help me out with this, and this?" And when you get a bit humble like that, and you just ask someone genuinely how they do something, or you just like to learn from them, even if they're the same age as you, even if they're younger than you, it doesn't really matter about age. It just matters about skill. You're really going to go a long way. And being scared or afraid or embarrassed to ask those questions, I think would be a real shame. So get used to doing it. I'm going to go on a bit of a riff here. I hope you don't mind, but if you're interested, I remember one of my English teachers way back when I was probably about 11. He said, we had this weird lesson where he said, you should be asking 10 questions a day from the age of 11. All the time you should be asking questions, because the way he put it was, when you're young, your bank account of questions is so big, because very, very infrequently is judgment passed on a young person for asking questions, because naturally you're not expected to know that much. You haven't been around that long. You haven't had the chance to consume a lot of information, to be exposed to certain situations and experiences. So you're lacking that knowledge that you want to get off people who have been around a bit longer. And that's fantastic. And you can learn so much by just asking questions and being curious and being interested. The thing is, when you do get a bit older, and I'm feeling this, maybe a little bit of this pressure now, and really trying to resist it, because essentially I'm still young, like, mid-20s. Yeah, feeling young, as obviously, but also just trying to think, I haven't even got started yet, if you really think about it. And the pressure that comes is when you do get to around, I suppose, my age and a little bit older, there is an expectation that you should know certain things, and you shouldn't be asking too many questions about the simple things. Or basically, the punchline is take advantage of the time you have now. If you are in that younger phase, ask questions, be inquisitive. I always say to people who I've spoken to about career opportunities, and I just tell them what I know. I don't know that much because my career actually hasn't even been that long, but I can at least give them a few tips and pointers on how I approached it and what I found works and what doesn't work so well. And I'm always trying to change and make that better. But one of the best things I find is your asking power to actually get someone that's pretty senior to perhaps get a coffee with you and take you through some options, or just talk you through what they do and try and pique your interest in something, is so much more powerful when you're younger, because people love that when there's someone who is taking the initiative, who's doing something perhaps a little bit beyond their years and really trying to take advantage of situations and learn, and shows a hunger and willingness and desire to learn, and comes to the meeting with questions and a bit of research. A quick tip: whenever I had a meeting with anyone who was where the relationship was like that, I'd ask them for a coffee. Perhaps I don't know them that well, or they're very senior in their business, they're very experienced. I would always make sure that it was abundantly clear to them that I'd done my research on them and their business. So I would deliberately, in fact, drop in things that I'd read about them on LinkedIn, on their website, to show that I'd done it. And the questions would be genuine as well, but I wanted to make the point because I know that if I took that meeting and I was in their position, I would have that expectation, and I would feel that the person was very, it was for real, it was legitimate, and was really up for and genuinely interested in the job or the business or the industry or the career. Cool. I've got to rock and roll. I've dragged this one on a bit. Let me know if you like it. Snapchat, WhatsApp, best place to get me. If you like the podcast, please give it a rating. It always helps. And have a fantastic, I'm about to have my weekend, but whenever you're listening to this, have a cracking next few hours of your day. Enjoy. I'm checking out.